So welcome everyone. Thank you all very much for coming and attending today's pre-law shadower session. We're incredibly grateful to have Kathryn Deo joining us today. Kathryn is the managing partner at the Arbutus Law Group. I hope I said that right, based out of Victoria, BC. So without further ado, I would love to give Kathryn the floor.
Thanks very much for the introduction. Yeah, I'm speaking to you here from Lekwungen Territory in beautiful Victoria. So I'm very, very lucky to be here. Yeah, and I'm happy to share any information that might be helpful to those of you that are thinking about your careers in law.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for taking the time again to do something like this. So my first sort of question will bring you back a little bit. So where did you attend university when you first started?
So I took a sort of an interesting path. So I was originally going to be a phys ed teacher. So I started at U of C because they had the best phys ed program in the country, and I was very keen. And then in my second year, the Alberta government decided that they were canceling all this funding for teachers and that anyone could teach phys ed. And I had a practicum where I was apparently very lucky to have one of the best phys ed programs in elementary, where the kids got gym twice a week in a gym with 2 or 3 classes, and they didn't even change because they didn't even have time, and it was like half an hour, and I was very disheartened. So I kind of decided I'm changing paths, and I had really wanted to go to BC anyway. So I switched gears and I went to SFU and kind of changed majors a whole bunch of times and ended up with a psychology degree.
Well, nice. It sounds like it ended up working out for you. I'm sorry to hear that your phys ed dreams got a little bit crushed there. That's a little bit upsetting, but at least it kind of, like I said, worked out in the end. So my next question was, where did you end up going to law school then?
I went to UVic.
Oh, you went to UVic. Okay, wonderful. Did you always know, I guess I kind of know the answer to this, but did you always kind of know that law was going to be something that you wanted to pursue and wanted to get into? Because obviously you talked about you wanted to be a phys ed teacher. So how did law kind of get, I guess, into your thoughts of maybe I can do this as a career or pursue this?
Well, it was something I had thought about as a kid. I thought that that's probably what I was going to do. And then when I got a little bit older, I decided to do something that I thought would be more fun, and I kind of lost interest. And then pretty quickly when I graduated with a bachelor's degree and the world did not fall in love with me and want to give me like a great, interesting job, I kind of thought, I better think of something quick. And so my parents had always wanted me to go to law school, of course. So I sort of, to sort of get them to quiet down and to maybe kind of give myself some options, I decided, fine, I'll write the Lsat. And I just kind of, it was almost on a whim. I just decided to do that. But pretty quickly, as soon as I had written it, I started to get really anxious about, well, how did I do? I really was like, back in the day, you had to call into this number and it would tell you if your scores are posted, and it took forever. And I thought I didn't care, but I kept calling. And I sort of thought, maybe I am interested in going, because normally I just wouldn't care. So I started, I got my LSAT scores and I did pretty well. And so I started getting a bit more serious at looking where I might want to go and what I might want to do. So.
Oh, wonderful. No, that's great. I mean, like personally, I'm writing my LSAT later on this month. So, and I know some of the people watching or that are going to be watching are probably following the same boat. That was kind of going to lead into my next question. So I know there's no one way to study for the LSAT, but how did you kind of prepare yourself for the LSAT? If you could provide us with a little bit of advice on that.
I didn't a lot. I think what helped me was I used to always do like crossword puzzles and logic puzzles for fun, and those really helped. So that part of the test was quite easy for me. I just I bought one of the practice guides and went through some of the questions. I don't know that there's any advantage to doing the expensive courses. I think a lot of it can't really be taught. You can get practice, you can sort of see the patterns, but if you can't get it, I don't know. I think I don't think it's worth spending thousands and thousands of dollars to try and improve your score.
I've heard both sides of it. I've heard some people take really well to it, and some kind of have said it's a waste of money. And so I think, especially what you're saying, I know like myself, with the way I'd studied and learned it, or learned, I think, how to do it. I don't know, I haven't written it yet, so I shouldn't be saying that. But with that being said, I think you kind of know what you're gonna how you're going to study and how you're going to get better at it. That's kind of the general term of advice that I've heard, I guess.
Yeah.
My next question kind of we're going to go back, I guess we'll go back into law school. So when you were at UVic, okay, so originally, were you from Alberta or?
Yeah, I grew up in Calgary.
Okay, gotcha. So when you went to UVic, what were some of the misconceptions you had, or some of the, this is kind of not what I thought law school was going to be like, even though you're maybe in a different province, whatever the case may be. Did you find that you had any misconceptions?
Well, not really. I really didn't know what I was getting myself into, where a lot of my classmates came from a line of lawyers and they knew every firm that existed, and I didn't really know anything about any of that. I didn't have any. I had one lawyer in my family that I didn't know very well in a different country, and that was about it.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So you're kind of like you're on your own lone wolf type thing. You had to figure it out a little bit for yourself. Well, it ended up working out real well for you. So what kind of made you, after law school, could you maybe take us through like your articling and then perhaps to where you first got hired on to a firm?
Sure. So yeah, I kind of, like with all things, I took a little bit of a different path, I guess. So when I started in law school, when I got in and I decided I was going to go, I was going to be a prosecutor.
Okay.
And then after about 2 weeks, I was like, no, I'm going to be a defense lawyer. I was really interested in criminal law. And then at UVic, we did after the first couple of weeks, they do a whole introduction on Aboriginal law. And I realized, okay, that's exactly what I want to do. If I can't do anything else, I don't really want to be a lawyer. I never really wanted to anyway. So I had my heart set on that. I got very lucky. So UVic has a very strong Aboriginal law program. And one of their courses was taught by an Aboriginal law lawyer in town. And so I managed to get a position with him as a student that sort of continued through law school. UVic is a little bit of an alternative approach. So a number of us had children during law school. So I had my first, in second year, and I took a little bit of a break, and then I had my second just after I graduated. So I took a short break and then was able to do part-time articles at the same firm that I had started at. So okay. I was lucky to have that all work out.
Absolutely, totally. So I guess that kind of your love for, I guess, the Aboriginal law and going into areas of Indigenous law, that made you choose kind of the area that you work in now, I presume?
Yeah, so once I, right away in first year decided that's what I wanted to do, I planned all my courses around, what I was interested in, and I didn't worry at all, because I really didn't think I'd be able to have an area of practice. I didn't think it would work out. So I just took all the courses I was interested in, and I didn't worry about whether that was going to help me with the bar exams or anything else. I just did what was interesting, which I encourage everyone to do, because when I did write the bar exam, in BC anyway, the way it worked out, there's 2 exams. One of them happened to be everything I had taken, and the other exam happened to be all of the courses I hadn't taken. So I really thought I was going to fail that exam, and I got 0.5% difference between the 2. It didn't matter. It didn't matter at all if I had taken business associations, which I didn't, or any of that stuff. It didn't matter. So I would encourage people to follow their path. And so that's what I did. I took a lot of environmental law courses. I took everything that they offered that having to do with Aboriginal law and everything that was interesting. And I think that's the path that people should do.
Sounds like it. And I mean, it kind of sounds like it totally paid off, because it just kind of rolls into my next question of where you are at now, being the managing partner of your firm, and going into your firm. So your firm's areas, they're quite vast, but you touched on a couple of them actually. Like I was going to bring up just environmental law or the taxation law and initiatives that your firm does. Could you kind of provide us with a little bit of an overview of some of the areas that your firm specializes in?
Yeah, so we pretty much exclusively practice in Aboriginal law or environmental law, but the vast majority is Aboriginal law, and mostly related to governance. So we mostly do a solicitor's practice, so we don't really do courtroom stuff very much. We mostly help communities with laws and policies and kind of planning, that kind of stuff. So most of the work would connect in some way or other to the Indigenous government governing itself. So whether that's developing laws around its land use or negotiating an agreement for self-government, or negotiating an agreement with a business that wants to do some kind of resource development in their territory or on their reserve lands. Most of the work that we do fits in that field, as well as, yeah, you mentioned taxation. So I do a lot of work with communities to implement property taxation regimes. So almost all of our clients are First Nations or Indigenous groups or Indigenous organizations. We do have some environmental law clients that aren't always Indigenous groups, but the vast majority is work for First Nations and Indigenous communities.
That's wonderful. That's absolutely, it's incredible. And honestly, I think you're the first lawyer that I've had on that has that specialization in Indigenous law and Indigenous advocacy. It's something that I personally have never had the privilege to talk to someone about, and or even just learn a little bit more about it. So I thank you very much for sharing that with me. So as I just touched on, so you're the managing partner currently of, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing this wrong, Arbutus Law Group, is that correct?
Arbutus.
Arbutus,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. No, that's okay. We didn't realize that most people in Canada don't know what it is. It's like so West Coast specific. We didn't really realize that.
Gotcha. Okay, so thank you for making me feel a little less guilty about it. So could you maybe discuss, because you're also one of the first managing partners I've really talked to as well. Would you be able to share some of your daily tasks as a managing partner, maybe how they depart from what an associate or maybe what another partner might do?
Yeah, so managing partner is kind of the one that's, so in our firm, we're a pretty small firm, but we do have an office administrator. So she definitely takes the bulk of the responsibility and the administrative tasks on for sure. But the managing partner would be the one if there's, certain messages that need to get communicated to the other lawyers. I would do that, organizing meetings, certain decisions I would take the lead on making, so that all of the partners don't need to be called on all the time for all of that. So usually one of the main points of contact for people outside the firm. Gosh, it's a really hard job to describe. There's a lot of little bits and pieces, working out contracts with suppliers or service providers, all of those kinds of things.
Gotcha. It sounds like, because the one thing that I've seen and sometimes heard of is, you watch a show like Suits. I don't know if you've seen Suits, but yeah. You see what kind of the managing partners there do, and then the associates. And I have talked to another senior partner, and they go, it's not really anything like that. So it's nice that we get a little bit of insight, because we really only see it that one way, right?
Yeah.
So it's nice to hear kind of the other side of it, the real side to it. I just kind of want to go back a little bit about on your work with Indigenous law and Aboriginal law. Is it solely confined to, like, I don't know, maybe not just your area of practice, but your firm's work? Is it solely confined to British Columbia, or do you expand to other parts of Canada?
Yeah, we've got clients all over. So our firm is kind of unique as well, although maybe not as much as we were in the beginning, but we've got lawyers in different parts of the country. So we're kind of virtual, and we have clients. So most of my clients are in BC, but I have a big client that I have worked with for about 10 years in Ontario. And I have been working in Northwest Territories in the last couple of years. We've got clients in Quebec and Newfoundland, kind of all over. I mean, still the majority of our clients are in BC. The majority of Indigenous groups or First Nations in Canada are in BC. There's about just over 600 across the country, but about just over 200 are in BC. Wow. So it's a lot of work out here.
I can imagine. So I guess you're well, maybe not so much now, but you're traveling around. You get to talk to other people and meet other people, and that sounds like, that's super interesting to me, because we see a lot of the work or what a lawyer does, and it's solely confined to the office, or they're solely confined to like a downtown core area. But it sounds like your job allows you to branch off, travel, talk to people,
Used to.
actually work in the field maybe a little bit. So
Yeah, that was that. I mean, that was one of the best parts of the job. Yeah, I used to travel a lot and loved going to see all different parts of the country and different communities. And yeah, hopefully we'll get back to that one of these days. But it's been a very surreal experience having all of those meetings move onto Zoom.
yeah, I can imagine. I can totally imagine.
Yeah.
As I'm still talking about this, so you currently are the general counsel for the First Nations Finance Authority. So would you mind talking to me about what that role entitles and its importance?
Yeah, so the First Nations Finance Authority is one of the three institutions that sort of govern under this federal piece of legislation called the First Nations Fiscal Management Act. And the Finance Authority basically gives loans to First Nations in a pool borrowing, it's a bit technical, but in a pool borrowing program. So sort of like what municipalities in some provinces do, strength in numbers. So they kind of go in together and get really good favorable rates on the bond market together because, you know, a very small town of 4,000 people probably wouldn't get a good credit rating on its own, but when they're all pooled together and borrowing together, they can all back each other up. So the First Nations Finance Authority is built on that model where First Nations can get loans based on different types of revenue sources that they have at very, very competitive rates. So I work with the Finance Authority on where there's amendments proposed to the act. I get consulted on that or help to work with them on that, and just different general questions that may come up. What else can I talk about? I have to be careful about what I say. But yeah, I just they have a number of different counsel that they'll call on for different pieces. There's a lawyer that does all of the debentures and very technical financial stuff. That's way out of my league. He takes the lead on all of that, but more of the on the ground kind of some negotiation things and a lot of work on amending the act and the regulations. I get involved with that.
That sounds wonderful. It sounds like it's something you take a passion in as well.
Yeah, it's not something, when I said I was going to do Aboriginal law, I thought like everyone else, I'm going to be doing the big sexy rights and title cases and I'll be in court for sure. And I kind of accidentally happened to get asked to do, when I was a very junior lawyer, some property tax stuff that I never thought I would like, and I found it quite interesting. And early on in my career, I got asked to do what turned out to be the first set of laws under that act that I mentioned. So as I've gotten to do that work, I've realized how, for me, it's quite interesting. I really like drafting. I like worrying about commas and semicolons and all of that nerdy stuff. I quite like that. And it's been very rewarding because it can bring really significant change to the community, because if you're helping them bring in revenue sources that help to improve the conditions of life for the members, that can be quite rewarding. So in my own way, I've found it very interesting. Not a lot of people probably would agree with me.
I honestly agree with you. Just listening to the serious role that you have, and kind of everyone kind of knows the atrocities that the First Nations had. I'm speaking as a non-Indigenous person, that the First Nations and Indigenous people have had in the past. So it's wonderful to hear that there's oversight for them, and that there's people such as yourself that are smart, hardworking people that want to look out and make them. I'm at a loss for words, actually, but provide some sort of oversight for them and make them able to just be functional in a very dysfunctional Canadian society, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's oversight so much. Like really what we do is we're really working with the communities. We're not kind of telling, I mean, obviously like with any client, your job is to protect their interests and advise them. But I think it's no different when with a First Nation, we're not kind of telling them what they need to do. We're really working, helping them to achieve whatever their goal is. And we really work closely directly with the client and get their input, and instead of kind of the old school way, which used to be really to just tell the client what they need, do it, and kind of, not even explain it to them.
Right.
It's not so much like that
Right.
anymore. Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I apologize for, like I said, I ran out of words there and
That's okay.
the wheels started spinning. Back to presently now. So you're currently working towards your Master's of Law. Is that correct?
Yeah, I just completed my last course a couple of months. No, when did I send my paper? Yeah, in June. So I haven't officially got the degree yet, but I've completed my requirements, and I guess there's gonna be some lame virtual grad in the fall.
Yeah, some of us have had that. Congratulations, first and foremost.
Thank you.
Did you know something you always wanted to achieve? I guess, like I know you mentioned back you started out wanting to be a phys ed teacher, but I guess when I say always, maybe perhaps when you first started working as a lawyer, was it something that you kind of thought, hey, I kind of want to get my master's of law, or was it something that kind of sprung about?
No, I mean, it was kind of a fleeting thought, but I thought, well, why would I really want to do that? And kind of, it's too much work. What's why? But why I did decide to do it was I got actually through some work through the some volunteer work through the Bar Association. I got quite interested in dispute resolution and how that it's really needed in Indigenous communities. And so I had a colleague that had done this program through Osgood. And so that piqued my interest, and it's designed for professionals. So it's designed around working. I couldn't imagine taking a year off and having the motivation to write a thesis that was like 100 pages. I just couldn't do that. So this, you take a course at a time or two at a time, and it was a ton of work, but it was a lot more manageable to do that. So
Right.
That's what I did. Yeah.
That's awesome. Maybe to those who are watching, some of them may be thinking about doing their master's law. Is it something that you would recommend or consider recommending to others that are interested in it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on what you want out of it. And for some people, doing them kind of more traditional route might be fantastic for them. Definitely anyone that's wanting to teach, then that's pretty much a requirement. It's not something that I really want to do. I just was a good way to learn more in an area that I didn't know a lot about. And the program that I chose was very hands-on, which was really helpful. Also weird when it went to Zoom instead of being in person, but
Yeah, aren't we all kind of doing that? I know you mentioned virtual graduation. I had a virtual graduation, so we'll make the best of it, I can tell you that. um, Kind of just, I'm wrapping down sort of the end of my questions here, but I'm going to kind of get them a little bit more broad here. So it sounds like you have an absolutely, like I said, you have such an important job for Indigenous communities and Indigenous peoples throughout Canada, not just confined to BC, but throughout all of Canada. But I wanted to ask, what's your favorite part about being a lawyer or working in the legal field?
I really love getting to do the work that I do, and I really love the clients that I've gotten to work with. Indigenous people are some of the most amazing, kind people, and it's a real privilege to get to go into a community and be invited to a feast, or to spend time and to learn about their view and what they want to achieve. And it's been fantastic. And when my kids were little, I couldn't imagine any other area of law where I could say, oh, my kid's sick, I can't come, before COVID, I can't come to this meeting. And they'd say, what do you mean? Bring your kid, we'll babysit.
Oh,
That would not happen in corporate law, for sure.
yeah, absolutely. You know, that sounds totally interesting. And I mean, it's something we're not all exposed to, right? Because as you mentioned, like lawyers kind of, they have that corporate, not that I know, I'm not a lawyer, but they have that corporate aspect to them where, like you say, it's going to be, no, this is not going to fly, but you say they welcome you with open arms. So
Yeah.
that's something different that we don't really hear about all the time, which I think is absolutely wonderful. So I'm kind of getting to my last question here. So as someone who has had an exceptional career, both highly decorated and educated in the legal profession, what advice would you give to either those in attendance or those who are watching, maybe that are thinking about law school or working in the legal field, or maybe even working for Indigenous communities, perhaps?
Well, for anyone thinking about it, I would definitely say just kind of follow your own path. And if you really have a keen interest in criminology or poli-sci, great, do that. But if you don't, it doesn't matter. When I think about the people that came in my first year of law, it was such a fascinating range of backgrounds, and it really didn't matter. And you know, we had someone who actually was I think a journalist for the Globe and Mail. We had someone who had a Master of Fine Arts in sculpting. We had a theology major. We had a math major, women's studies, like anything you can think of. And then me, the kind of former, maybe phys ed teacher slash anthropology, sociology, whatever, phys ed. And it really didn't matter. It didn't give any, I don't think it, you know, you just have to be interested and work hard. And I don't think the people that did the more traditional route had a huge advantage in law school. And yeah, and to the extent that you can, just not every school has the same range of courses and they have different specializations, but I just really encourage people to not follow the pressure of, you know, the strict path that you're supposed to be on. It creates so much pressure. And I actually hated first year. And I stopped out for a little bit because I just thought, well, this is stupid. Why did I do this? What was I thinking? And I had what at the time, you know, seemed like a pretty good job. So I moved to Vancouver for a short period of time and got really lucky that it was probably like the only job that was terrible enough that I didn't want to continue with immigration. And also, I had registered for a course. UVic had these special courses that they would only have every couple of years. And my favorite prof was going to be teaching a course on sexual orientation in the law. And I knew that if I didn't go back, you know, the chance that they'd have it again and I could take it again. So the combination of the terrible job and knowing I'd missed that course, I went back. But what I told myself was, I do have a point here. I know I'm meandering, but I kind of said, okay, I'm going to go back. But the only way I'm going to get through it is to do it the way that I'm going to do it. And I'm not going to feel any pressure about having to take, you know, real estate transactions or any of this stuff that I don't want to do. I'm not going to do it. And like I said at the beginning, it worked out. So I just encourage people, law school's hard enough and it really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, there was, you know, the courses were really good and interesting and I learned a lot, but they really had almost nothing to do with the bar course or the hands-on stuff. Like almost everything you need to know as a lawyer, you have to learn through articles or through experience. It's not going to come out of the class. So take the classes you're interested in. And most people that had that approach have, you know, found their way maybe kind of interestingly or accidentally into something that they love.
Gotcha. Well,
yeah.
Thank you very much for the advice. And like I said, that's all the questions I have. I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to come out and share your journey and share what you do in your profession. And I'm absolutely thrilled with what you're doing. I think you're doing an amazing job. One of my colleagues, Monina, she had to head out while she was watching this, but she wanted me to ask you this question. It's about law school, so we're going to go back a little bit more to it. So you mentioned you wanted to go to BC and you ended up going to UVic. Did you apply anywhere else, or did you have any other sort of ideas of where you wanted to go, or were you kind of always set on, I want to go to UVic, I want to go to BC, and once you got there, you're like, yeah, this is my place?
UVic was probably my second choice, actually. I applied to a bunch of places. The only one I didn't get into was my safety school, which was a little bit scary. I really wanted to go to Dalhousie, but I got waitlisted to UVic, and so I was waiting, and so I was really wanting to go to Dalhousie, but I got married really young, like just after I graduated, and then like in the summer after graduation before law school. And so my brand new then, husband said, oh, once I got into UVic a couple of weeks before I was waitlisted, and he's like, I know you want to go to Dalhousie, but can't we just go to Victoria? So that's what we did. And it's been great. And we've had a great life. I'm sure if we had moved to Dalhousie, we would have probably loved it there too. Right. Yeah. And I never looked back from, it was a very good choice. And I think I would have probably had a great path there too, but it would have been a very different life.
Yeah, absolutely. No, but it
Yeah.
sounds like it worked out all in the end. But I think that's one of the things like we hear a lot. Sometimes people just kind of want to go to they'll hear about the big, like the U of T, the McGill, UBC, and that's kind of their shot. They go, these are going to be the shots I want to go to. So kind of hearing where other people applied kind of just gets, I guess it gets the gears turning as well, and kind of hearing their stories for it. So I appreciate the story and I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Well, you're
Um,
welcome.
so that's all the questions that I have and that everyone's kind of sent to me. So I just want to say one more time, on behalf of Pre-Law Shadowers, Kathryn, thank you so, so much for taking the time to come out here. And we really appreciate
Welcome.
the time that you took the time you shared with us. I appreciate it.
Happy to.
Have a great rest of your day. Take care.
You too. Bye.